And we're back for Weeknight Update. Tonight, a special report on a troubling trend threatening American democracy as we approach a major election. Voting provides Americans with an essential voice in choosing leaders to make critical decisions about jobs, education, opportunities, and more. But rather than making sure that every voter counts, some politicians are working overtime to restrict the right to vote. Experts say that new, restrictive voting laws in dozens of states could keep millions of eligible voters from voting this November, and that the biggest impact will be on students, African Americans, Latinos, and older Americans. But these unfair laws are not going unchallenged. As our reporting found, in state after state, civil rights groups and courageous citizens are taking a stand and making a difference. We begin a report tonight in Wisconsin with our special voting correspondent, Selena Lopez. Selena?
Thanks, Adam. Here in Wisconsin, activists are out in force helping young people register to vote and protect their voting rights. But first, we'll hear from a student who actually lost his right to vote in a recent election because politicians passed a law increasing the amount of time someone must live at an address before they qualify to vote, which hits young, mobile voters especially hard. His name is Dylan Jambrick.
These three new voter restrictions of a really strict photo ID requirement, the extension of residency requirements to 28 days, and the elimination of corroboration has really affected students. This past spring, I was unable to vote because I wasn't able to prove residency under the new requirements. I had moved from one place to another because they changed the residency requirement from 10 days to 28 days, and they also eliminated the ability to bring your roommate who could vouch for you and say you did in fact live at that establishment even if you weren't on the lease. And so because of that, I wasn't able to vote. It was the first time I've actually seen a voter law suppress me, and then it made me think, what are even more underrepresented communities? How are they affected by these voter restrictions?
The people most affected by the voter ID law and changes in the election administration are young people, people of color, and the elderly.
Come on, register to vote real fast, fam. Come on, register to vote, man.
These voter suppression laws are very much an effort to take us backwards to pre-civil rights era. It's changing and altering elections, and we're fighting back.
Hey, bro, are you old enough to vote? How old are you?
I think the more that we turn out to vote, the more power we have in the system, and I just try to meet people where they are.
Ain't no solution?
Ain't no solution.
Really?
But when we do come across individuals who are sort of skeptical or apathetic, and then I say, if voting wasn't important, would people be trying to steal it?
The real name, bro, not the rap name.
Young people from all across this country have brilliant ideas, and it needs to be infused in society. And I think one of the main ways that we do that is through voting.
Thanks, Selena. Unfortunately, Wisconsin isn't alone in the struggle against restrictive voting laws. Colorado's Secretary of State has also been using the power of his office to restrict voting and even to make it harder for local election officials to do their job. But activists in the Rocky Mountain State are standing up for voters.
That's right, Adam. Here in Colorado, the Secretary of State has tried to purge voting lists in ways that could hit Latino voters especially hard. And he tried to prevent county clerks from sending ballots to people who didn't vote in the last election, even members of the military. The reaction? Well, it's been fierce.
We're here because the Secretary of State is making a decision about whether or not people that didn't vote in 2010 should become inactive voters. It would disproportionately be Latino and African Americans that are taken off of the rolls.
Let my people vote! Let my people.
Looking back at the last year, we've seen voter ID legislation introduced in more than 38 states. Voter suppression comes in many forms. It can be as subtle as rulemakings through the Secretary of State's office or legislation at the state capitol to make it harder for people to vote by putting voter registration restrictions in place, or as obvious as robocalls telling voters that the day of the election has changed. In Pueblo in 2008, there was a series of robocalls that went out the night before the election telling voters that their polling places had changed. The county clerk found out about it and did his best to get the word out that that information was incorrect.
My mom was one of those people that received one of those robocalls. She called me immediately and asked me, had we changed our precinct?
And I just couldn't believe that this could be happening. How could somebody call you and try to take your vote away from you?
And as soon as I heard that, my heart dropped because I thought, how many people are getting these phone calls today?
I think they targeted mostly senior people. They said there was something that happened and they had to move the election to Wednesday instead of Tuesday. I think the Secretary of State's job is to get more people to vote and not less people to vote. And there shouldn't be no restrictions.
So we put you on notice, Secretary of State, that we will not allow you to take away our vote.
It has become a battleground where when we were seeing, one or two or three bills proposed that would have changed the election law in Colorado, now we're seeing 50.
It's becoming a growing trick in the kind of partisan tool bag when you're trying to win an election. People need to really own the right to participate in this election and not let these voter suppression efforts push us out of the process.
Selena, it's great to see the people of Colorado standing up for what's right. As our next report shows, citizens really can fight back successfully against restrictive voting laws. For an inspirational look, let's go now to Ohio.
Well, Adam, Ohio is an uplifting story. After Ohio politicians passed HB 194, a grossly unfair and restrictive voting law, citizens rose up, collecting hundreds of thousands of signatures to put a measure on the ballot to repeal the law. The citizen backlash against HB 194 was so powerful that the politicians changed course and repealed most of the law themselves. Let's watch now to see how voting rights advocates achieved this important victory.
Once the governor signed the bill, the clock began ticking.
We had to get those signatures in 72 days.
It was a race against the clock.
The petition drive is now in full swing to try to put House Bill 194 on hold.
This bill was an assault on the rights of citizens in this state. And here's the greatest danger. It is done under the auspices of the law. And so we had to approach this for what it was, a basic assault on the fundamental rights of citizens in the state of Ohio.
I think we were in panic mode most of the time, but we saw organization in Ohio like we have not seen. You had the labor movement gathering signatures, the faith movement, the civil rights community in Ohio was on board gathering signatures, the disability community.
This was our war room. You couldn't walk through this room because the boxes were so large. There were just boxes from all the 88 counties across the state of Ohio. This room got smaller and smaller the closer we got to September 29th. Everybody in this room was so busy working, no one even knew that we had the numbers until we counted it all up at the very, very end, and we found out on the 29th of September that we actually had stopped the law from becoming effective.
Do it. Congratulations!
We were so pleased because at the end of the day, we qualified in over 55 of the 88 counties.
We knew that when we had stopped House Bill 194, that we had sent a message to the Ohio legislature, that we had sent a message to people in Washington, to any group that thought that just because they were in power, they could do whatever they wanted to. We knew that we sent a message that democracy is a treasure, it still matters, and you can't step on it.
I didn't get a chance to fight on the lines in the 60s. I was a young girl, and this was our 1960 moment. For many of us who are my age or younger, this was our time to stand up and make sure that we didn't let go by the wayside the legacy of so many blacks who fought, who lost their lives fighting for the right to vote.
There you have it, folks. Our democracy, our ability to have a say in our own government is threatened by unfair laws designed to prevent some people from voting. But those laws don't have to stand. They can be overturned.
Yes, Adam, and not only can those laws be defeated, but the politicians can't keep citizens from voting if everyone commits to getting registered, getting their friends, family members, and neighbors registered, and then making sure to vote. Every voter counts.
And that's what it's really all about. Every citizen being encouraged and empowered to exercise their right to vote. So don't just stand there. Become a part of the story in your state and your community. Find out how you can help protect and expand voting rights by visiting civilrights.org/vote2012. Because every voter counts.